Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Gordon and we are back to continue our discussion of our party composition and character builds. So I'm picking up on the previous video that I did, where I went through my front line. Actually, let me breathe because it's a continuation and I don't want to lose my voice. The first video we went through the party composition, the roles that everybody has in the party, how they work, how they're supposed to interact. And I also went into full detail on my main character. Then, the second video, I am discussing my frontline, so Valerie, Rigongar and Knock Knock. They share some common functionality, so it kind of speeds up the final two. And now, all that's left is for us to discuss Cordampina, which is my cleric, as well as Mr. Jubilost. So, let's start with Cordampina.
Together we stand.
The first thing to mention about this character is that it is not, obviously, a companion. If you've played the game before, you know that she does not exist in the game, and I guess the name also is a dead giveaway. So, this is a mercenary. It's a mercenary that I picked up very, very early on. I think as soon as we got to Oleg's trading post, I got her in the party. And well, first let's discuss her role. So, the role of this character is first and foremost as a buffer. She is here to buff our party, to give us a lot of very useful buffs, bonuses, immunities, advantages, all that kind of good stuff. This is why she is in the party. It is her main purpose for the party, buffing our friends. Other than that, she also brings something else very, very important for the party, which is a pet. We get access to a leopard. In this case, I picked a leopard because I think leopard is probably the best pet you can get in the game, at least for tanking purposes. So she also brings in the pet, which is incredibly powerful for the party. It can often do better than a companion at actual tanking the enemies. And she can also contribute with some damage by using a longbow. I also built her to deal some damage with a longbow. And also some offensive spells also. She is a versatile character, but again, her main purpose really is for buffing your allies. Now, I also want to mention, why do I have a mercenary in my party? The game already offers you two choices of cleric. You have Harem as a cleric, and you have Tristian as an ecclesiarch, the same thing that Cordampina has. The reason why I like the mercenary is because Harem, I find, fills a role that isn't really what I want out of a character such as this. I think he also comes with some wasted feats, because, well, especially if you're playing on the higher difficulties. If you're playing on lower difficulties, Harem can actually be somewhat of an off-tank and you can do fine with him. But if you up the difficulty, he is no longer viable in melee. So at that point, he has some defensive feats which basically won't do anything for him. And also, his domains are not that good for what I want a character such as this to be. He is more offensive. Harem is the type of guy that if I have in my party, I will likely give him focus in necromancy and just start having him cast stuff like Bone Breaker, Bone Shatter, Fear, Finger of Death, or Will of the Banshee. All kinds of nasty offensive necromancy spells I would use, as well also as some buffs. But he does come with some wasted feats. I don't think he's that much of a fit for this particular party, so I don't take him. Tristian, on the other hand, could kind of work. It's true, it could kind of work, but personally, I don't really enjoy Tristian as a character. I don't like him too much, so I don't want to put up with him in the party. But that's not really the main reason. The main reason are going to be domains. So, again, we're talking about playing the game, in my case, for this playthrough, I played it in Last Aslanti and also on unfair difficulty. So I think his domains, while they can be good, they are not as useful as other options. So the reason why I have a mercenary is because I want a cleric that can actually fulfill the needs I want in that aspect. So let's look at the level ups here on Cordampina. In terms of level progression, it's very easy because it's pure class. It's only class surge. And the deity that I pick is Erastil. I picked this deity because she has domains animal, community, good, law, and plant. A lot of these domains are good. Well, a lot of these domains are useful, but especially animal and community are extremely good. They are very, very good domains. So the animal domain gives you access to an animal companion, which, like I mentioned before, is very handy. The animal companion is going to be the best tank you can get for a long time in the game. Okay, he's actually the person. He's actually the character that I always send in front. If I want enemies to focus on something, it's either going to be on summons or on my pet. Because the pet is very tanky. He is very, very tanky. He has a lot of HP. He has a lot of good stats. He's even good offensively. Also has access to a trip, being a leopard, so it's even more utility. And if the pet dies, as soon as you rest, he comes back up. You don't need to resurrect him. You don't need to purchase scrolls or anything like that. So it's very easy to use him as a frontliner because he's very sturdy, and even if he goes down, it doesn't cost you anything to bring him back up other than resting. So just by having the animal domain for that purpose is very, very good. Something that Harem and Tristian cannot do. And then community gives us access to some very powerful spells as well, and also access to Guarded Earth, which is one of the best abilities that you can get on a cleric. What this does, if you don't know it, at 8th level, so from 8th level and forward, you can create a ward that protects a specified area. Creating this ward is a full round action, so something that you typically want to use as a pre-buff. All friendly creatures in the area receive a sacred bonus, which is kind of rare, so it basically stacks with a lot of things, equal to your wisdom modifier on all saving throws and attack rolls while inside the warded area. And our wisdom can go up quite high. So I have a +10 right here, which means everybody in this area has +10 to all saving throws and +10 to attack rolls. That is an insane buff. The ward immediately ends if you leave the area, sure, but it's a very large area. And it also lasts for 1 hour per level in the class that gave you access to this domain. You can use this only once per day, because it's so powerful. But again, it's a very large area. It lasts for an insane amount of time, and it provides you incredible buffs. So, community domain and animal domain, I think, are probably the best / safest domains you can get for your cleric if you want more of a buffing cleric. Okay, which is what we want here from Cordampina. And that's why we picked her. This is why we have the mercenary, because we have the domain that we want, and we can also build it how we want. The other main thing about picking Erastil is that she is already proficient with a longbow. And the one thing that's kind of not as good on a character that you want to specialize in spell casting and buffing is that once you are done buffing the party, what else are you going to do? You don't really do much else other than that. So you don't want to send the character into melee because he's typically going to be weak or die too quickly. And if you want to use ranged weapons, you're often not going to be that good either. Okay, so you can try and use Tristian, for example, as a person using a crossbow. He will never be very good. So with her, I'm giving her a lot of dexterity from the start, a lot of charisma, a lot of wisdom, all the things I want for a cleric. She gets the proficiency with longbow, which means she can use longbows from the get-go without wasting any feats, and there are some very good longbows in the game. And not only am I going to be using her to buff, but when she's not casting spells, she's actually shooting enemies with the bow to help out with damage. Okay, so she's versatile. She will never be a damage dealer like, for example, Knock Knock or Rigongar or my main character, but more damage helps out. All kind of damage you can get is good. So, very good things coming out of the Erastil deity. That's why I pick it. In terms of level ups, I actually start with your typical archer feats. I take point blank shot and I take precise shot, because if I wanted to shoot enemies, I wanted to actually hit them, not just miss. I take spell focus in evocation, because one of the spells I love using on any cleric is... where is it? Archon's Aura. This is basically an aura that you have. Anybody affected by this is going to take a penalty on attack rolls, saving throws, and armor class, which is very good, very, very useful. And it's an evocation spell, so just making it harder to resist is a good thing. After that, we take Boon Companion, so that our animal companion will actually get a bump in levels, because he starts out quite weak. With Boon Companion, he levels up a little bit faster and a little bit higher. So it's all pretty much mandatory if you want to use the pet. Then I took Rapid Shot just for more, competence in shooting enemies. Same thing for Many Shot, just shooting more arrows. Naturally, these here are essentially optional. You didn't need to go for this. If you want to cast more spells, for example, more offensive spells, you could instead go for something like a Spell Focus or Meta Magic, anything like that. But honestly, until you get to some higher levels, your offensive spells are kind of limited. You are mostly there to buff your party, at least the way I play it. So, while we don't have very powerful spells, I might as well increase her competence with her bow. Other than that, I like to pick Heighten Spell, because you can heighten any kind of spell to a higher level. It will make that spell more difficult to resist. And something that I end up using a lot, like I said, is Archon's Aura. And I typically like to heighten it to a higher level to make it harder to resist. I had it to level 7. I didn't actually bother to have it, for example, heightened to level 9, which I could. But yeah, heighten is very useful. And another example is, if you don't have a sufficient amount of a specific spell, like for example Death Ward, because I wanted 5, but I only had 4 over here, I can just heighten it up to a different level and have one additional cast of Death Ward that way. So it's always useful to have this kind of meta magic on a character like this. After that, I went for Skill Focus Perception, just because she is also our perception character in the party. She is the one that I'm giving the most perception, so having the skill focus means a +6, which is very useful. And again, she doesn't really need that many feats to work well, so you can slot this in here, maybe even earlier, and it works out fine. And finally, I went for Greater Spell Focus Evocation, because at this point, not only do we have access to Archon's Aura, but we also have Flame Strike, we might even have Storm Bolts, Firestorm, just a bunch of powerful evocation spells, so making them more difficult to resist is obviously a buff. And then I also went for Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus in Enchantment, for the same reason as Evocation. Clerics have a lot of very good enchantment spells, so again, making them more difficult to resist is once again a very powerful thing. This character is more open to personal taste, so you could change a lot of what's in here and still do well. So you might not use the bow as much, and you could instead go for something like Selective Channeling. To, if you are healing somebody with channel positive energy, you don't also heal your friends. Or you can get extra uses of channel positive energy and negative energy. Whatever you want is gonna work out well. I think the main things here for this character are gonna be Boon Companion, to make our pet work better. Spell Focus on the types of spells that you really like using. heightened spell for versatility and improving your best spells, and in my case, giving her some feats in ranged combat to help out with damage, because like I said, there are several very good longbows in the game, and in my particular lineup for this playthrough, I don't use any archer character. So for instance, if I had a Kundayo in the party, maybe I wouldn't have built her to be an archer, because a Kundayo would take care of that role. But yeah, in my case, I went for this kind of as a test also. I think it worked out fine. I liked it. I think it's a very solid build. Now, what also really makes the character is the spells you pick, right? So, naturally, this won't be like the sorcerer. You don't have to pick spells on level up. With clerics, you get access to all of the spells of that particular level as soon as you reach the level. You don't have to pick them. And you also gain access to some extra spells coming from your domain. So I have access here to some druid spells, Magic, Fang and Entangle for example. This is because I have the animal domain. And then I also have some protection from evil, protection from chaos, which I think are going to be coming from our community domain. So you do get some extra spells. Actually, you can see right here. You get Bless, Protection from Alignment, Communal, Prayer, Energy Communal, Burst of Glory, Stone Skin, Restoration Greater, Legendary Proportions, Heal Mass. So this is what we get from Community, and from Animal we get Magic Fang, Hold Animal, a bunch of stuff. From Animal Domain, I don't use too much. It's mostly for the pet. But if you want to check out domains, you can check out what they give you in terms of spells. But like I was saying, you get access to all of this when you level up. You don't have to pick like a sorcerer or a bard. So I will only mention the stuff that I enjoy using, I think is powerful, and that also worked well for my particular party lineup. So I take Magic Fang as my domain slot, because we have our pet. So this is just a little buff to my pet. No very hidden reason or specific reason. It's just for a tiny buff to the pet. And then the biggest hitters, in my opinion, from level 1 spells from the cleric are going to be Shield of Faith. This gives you a +2 deflection bonus to AC, which isn't much, but it will scale as you level up. So at level 18, this will actually give you a +5 deflection bonus to AC on anybody you cast this on. So you get a very big boost to AC just from a single level 1 spell, and it also removes the need to use something like like Rings of Protection, right? So Ring of Protection +5 is an end game type of ring, but it doesn't do anything else other than give you deflection bonus. So personally, I think it's more interesting to use rings that give you unique effects. Let's say, for example, the Ring of the Beast King, or Dragonfly Ring, or whatever you might want. Even an Evasion Ring is going to be better than just getting deflection. So if you don't want to use an item such as this, or some other item that also gives deflection, Shield of Faith will take care of that for you. So very useful, very powerful spell that you can get right from level 1 that also scales. Very, very good. Bless is also a very handy spell. It will give you a 1 morale bonus on attack rolls and on saving throws against feat effects. It's party-wide, lasts for a decent amount of time because it's minute per level. Just overall useful spell to have, and it also dispels Bane in case you get hit by that from your enemies. Then I also like having Remove Fear. This is just extra defenses against feat effects. You don't want to get feared, so saving against it is awesome. And the most important out of them all, Unbreakable Heart. I have mentioned this on Valerie, so I won't go too much into detail, but essentially, if one of your companions is debuffed by some kind of mind-affecting effect like Crushing Despair or Confusion or something like that, Unbreakable Heart, you cast this on them and it will negate that effect. If one of your frontline damage dealers gets confused, they might actually just kill your entire party if you aren't careful. So this humble level 1 spell will just take care of that for you. Very important one. Other than that, there really isn't anything here that I can really see as being super useful. These are the ones I like the most. As for level 2, I typically like having protection from alignment. You can protect against evil or neutral or whatever you want. It will just give you a deflection bonus to AC and also to saves. This is something that I will only really use at the very start of the game. Once you progress a little bit further, you're gonna get better stuff. So I would probably just be using bark skin here or something like that. But early on, it can be handy. And then on level 2, at end game, I actually don't use a lot. I like having Grace. Until the end of the round, your movement does not provoke attacks of opportunity. So if anybody charges at you, or if you get surrounded in melee or anything like that, and you need to escape, just casting this, it's a swift action, that's the important part, means you can get out of the melee without taking attacks of opportunity. It can be quite handy. Early on level 2, what I typically take is buffs, something like Eagle Splendor or Bull Strength, you know, whatever you may need, I would take these buffs. Later on we have the mass version of these spells, that's why I no longer use them here, with the exception of Charisma. Remove Paralysis is always good during the entire course of the game, because you're always going to have enemies casting Hold Person or Icy Prison or whatever other kind of paralyzation effect. This level 2 spell will just remove that. It's very important. If your main character or one of your frontliners gets paralyzed, it usually means death if they're getting focused by any kind of enemy. This will negate that. Very important to have at least a couple of these memorized. Other than this, what else could you take? Bark Skin from the Animal Domain is useful, obviously. You can take Bone Shatter if you want an offensive spell, it can help out a little bit. Restoration Lesser if you want to, or if you expect to deal with certain enemies that will apply negative effects, right? Such as, for example, poison effects which reduce, which drain your dexterity or strength or constitution. This will heal some of that. Soundburst early on is also a very handy spell. It's also Evocation, which ties in well with our spell focus. It deals damage in an area and it can also stun them if they fail their saves. Can be quite handy. And also Hold Person, again, early on. It can also paralyze humanoid enemies. It can be very, very handy. I like having this, for example, for the Stag Lord fight. You can just paralyze the Stag Lord or one of his henchmen. It can be very good. On level 3, I always take Prayer at least once, because this one will give all of your party luck bonus on attack rolls, weapon damage, saves, and skill checks, and it will apply a penalty on those same rolls to every enemy in the area. So it's just a very handy, very good spell to have, at least one of. I always take at least one Delay Poison Communal. It will make everybody in your party immune to poison, which is very important in this game right from the start. You will always find enemies that inflict poison upon you, and you will soon learn that that is incredibly annoying, because it will give you very big penalties, it will drain your stats, it's just overall a very big nuisance. And just by casting this spell once, you are completely immune to poison for a full hour. If you also play with Stinking Cloud, and if you have an arcane caster that you want and you want to disable enemies, you should be using Stinking Cloud. This will also make you immune to Stinking Cloud. So it's just a very, very important spell to have. I also typically have a bunch of scrolls in my inventory as well, in case, let's say, I go for a fight, I use my Delay Poison Communal, and then I travel through the world. Typically 1 hour will have passed, and I will no longer have access to this spell, so having scrolls is also very handy. Again, very important, never leave home without at least one of these memorized. Also very important is Resist Energy Communal. This will apply a buff on everybody in the area for 10 minutes. It will give you resistance to the element you select, so be it fire, lightning, acid or cold. it will protect you against that. It will also scale as you level up. So if we see here, let me see, it gives you resistance 10 against the energy type chosen. So if you were to take, let's say, 10 points of damage from fire and you cast resist energy fire, you would take 0. If you took 11, you would only take 1, okay? And then this value will increase to 20 points at level 7 and to 30 points of resistance at level 11. And this is a very important spell from the start of the game up until the end of the game. The first time you will understand the importance of this spell is when you meet will-o-wisps, because you will start taking tremendous amounts of lightning damage and you are gonna think that those enemies are impossible and way too hard for you, and then you realize that if you cast just this one spell, it will make them a whole lot simpler. Naturally, it will also work for a variety of other enemies throughout the course of the game, and even against yourself. So if you have, for example, a wizard or a sorcerer that likes casting fireballs, fireball is not party friendly. If you don't want to bother too much about positioning, and you just want to toss fireballs on top of your front line, just by having resist energy communal on your front line, or everybody in fact, will negate a lot of the damage you will deal with your own spells as well. Very important, always have at least one. Typically I like having 2 of these available. Then I also like having Animate Dead, because summons can be very handy. They can deal with a lot of annoying enemies, for example, that will drain stats. Undead creatures cannot be drained, and these are skeletons. Or if you just want to clutter up the battlefield, occupy the attention of the enemies, make them waste their spells and attacks on the summons instead of your party, is a very good thing. It can be to occupy them while you kill them, or it can also be to occupy them while you run back and buff or hide or whatever you need. Summons can be very, very useful. And finally, I also like Magical Vestment. This is actually, in my opinion, a bugged spell. It's exploitable. What this does is, you imbue a suit of armor or a shield with an enhancement bonus of +5 per 4 cast. So it also scales. It goes up to +5, right? Now, what this should do is, if you have a magical armor that's already enhanced, for example, to +1, like a +1 chainmail, if you have magical vestment at the earlier level, it should not apply the bonus, because you are enhancing with a bonus of +1, but the armor already has a +1, so they basically negate themselves. The way it works in this game, it doesn't. It stacks. It shouldn't stack, but it does. The reason why I only have one of these memorized is because I only use this on Knock Knock, which in my opinion is the only legitimate use of the spell, because I'm using a robe. This has no enhancement, okay, so 0 enhancement, so that enhancement from the spell should actually apply. If you want to cheese the game and exploit the game, you could have a bunch more of these and cast Magical Vestment on top of everybody in your party. So you would have something like, for instance, Valerie with a +5 enhancement breastplate, cast Magical Vestment on her, and you would get an additional +5 bonus to AC that you shouldn't have. But yeah, for me that's exploiting, so I don't use it. Another very important spell on level 3, the only reason why it's not here is because I'm using it heightened on level 7, is, like I mentioned, Archon's Aura. So Archon's Aura lasts for a bunch of time. It's an aura around you, and any creature or any hostile creature within a 20-foot radius must succeed at a will save to resist the effect of this aura. It's also an evocation spell, so again plays into our spell focus. If they fail, they take a penalty of 2 on attack rolls and saving throws and armor class for the duration of the spell. So it is a very, very good. It is a very good debuff to apply on your enemies. Okay? It's also untyped penalty. So you can basically stack this with anything else. It's very, very powerful. I always love having it. I would always have at least one memorized. Other than this, there really isn't anything here that's particularly interesting, with certain specific exceptions. Like, if you like to play with summons and you want more summons, you can have Summon Monster. If you need to remove blindness or a curse or a disease, you have access to that right here as well. Or if you want to try and dispel magic on someone, it can also kind of be useful. I never really found dispel magic to be that useful in this game, especially because it's kind of hard to use. The enemies that you want to dispel are typically higher level than you, and dispel magic works based on your current caster level and the enemy caster level. So typically it fails, that's why I don't usually use it. On level 4 you have a lot of very good stuff. One that I would always have on me, is protection from energy communal. So the same reason as I have resist energy, protection is the same thing, except instead of giving you resistance, it will actually negate a flat amount of damage from a specific energy. Again, very, very handy. Always have at least one memorized. You also have access to Death Ward, one of the most important spells in the game. There will be a lot of occasions where you don't need Death Ward, but in the occasions that you do need them, they are essential. So what this does is, it will give you a +4 morale bonus on saves against all death spells and magical death effects. The subject is immune to energy drain and any negative energy effects, including channeled negative energy. Okay, so you will find a lot of undead enemies, like for example ghosts, that when they hit you, they will drain levels or they will drain stats. That is very, very nasty. It's awful to deal with. At times you might not be able to remove those debuffs. It's just overall a very, very horrible thing to have happen to you, and Death Ward will simply straight up negate that. There are certain enemies in this game which are extremely powerful, but if you are equipped with Death Ward, you trivialize them. They will not do anything against you. It is a crucial spell to have. I would always have at least a couple of them memorized for your frontline and for your very important characters, like for example your main character. I also like having freedom of movement, kind of for the same reason as Death Ward. A lot of the times you don't need to worry about paralyzation effects, but when you do have to deal with paralyzation effects or like web effects or whatever can slow you down, freedom of movement will make you immune to them. It's a very excellent buff to have on if you expect something like that to happen. Other than these, I'm going to leave this one for later. You also have Crusader's Edge, which is a very powerful buff as well. But this basically means that your weapons are going to become stronger against evil outsiders. So if you expect to fight evil outsiders, this is a very powerful buff. But overall, Pathfinder Kingmaker doesn't really have that many of those enemies. This is a much better spell, for example, in Wrath of the Righteous. Not so much in this game. That's why I don't usually pick it. But it is a powerful spell in case you are expecting to fight these enemies. Restoration can be very useful to remove, you know, negative ability scores drained. I mean, it says right here, right? Dispels temporary negative levels or one permanent negative level, cures all temporary ability damage, and restores all points permanently drained from a single ability score. So like I said, at times you are gonna get hit with level drain or stat drains, and the way to heal it is through spells. So restoration is one of those spells. So if you need it, you have access to it here on level 4. You also have some more summons, you have some shields, but nothing too relevant here. And then finally, I personally like Divine Power, especially because this character is also shooting with her bow quite often. And what Divine Power does is, It will give you a +1 luck bonus on attack rolls, weapon damage, strength checks, and strength-based skill checks for every 3 caster levels you have, so it scales as you level up. You will also make an additional attack at your full attack bonus per round, though it does not stack with haste, something to keep in mind, but it is a very nice buff, especially because it's a luck bonus. You don't really have that many sources of luck bonuses, so this will just give us essentially a +6 to all these things at end game. So I like having one for tough encounters. I would just buffer up with this and then shoot. On level 5, I like taking Burst of Glory, at least one cast of this. It's a short duration party affecting buff. It will give you a +1 sacred bonus on attack rolls and saves against feat effects, and also 1 additional hit point per caster level to a maximum of 20. In this case I have one more Death Ward because I felt like I needed it, upcast. You gain access to True Seeing, which is quite good. You can basically negate enemies that go invisible, so you can hit them accurately instead of hitting a concealed enemy. I love Bone Shatter. This is the kind of spell that is offensive. It's necromancy, so it isn't even the best thing for her, but this will deal a respectable amount of damage, but if the enemy fails to save, they will become exhausted for 1 minute per caster level, which is an incredible debuff, and even if they save, they will still get fatigued. So it's essentially a damage spell with a guaranteed debuff applied to it as well. And finally I take Breath of Life. This is essentially a resurrection spell that doesn't cost you any ingredients as long as you can get that companion back within the first 2 rounds of his death. Sometimes you can use it, other times it ends up just taking up space, but it is a cool spell nonetheless. Other than that, I find Angelic Aspect to be a very good buff that you can also have. The reason why I don't have it here is because I have the greater version at level 8. Break Enchantment can break negative effects on your party. It's something that I think can be quite good, although I prefer to make myself immune to those effects rather than trying to save myself against them. And overall, every time I have this spell memorized, I forget about using it, so I just don't use it. But it is a good spell. Cleanse is a cool personal spell as well. It will heal you for 48 points of damage plus 1 point per caster level, and will end the following effects: ability damage, blind, confusion, dazzle, disease, exhausted, fatigued, nauseated, poisoned, and sickened. So a very, very good spell. It's only personal though, which is the downside, but if you want to remove negative effects from your cleric, Cleanse is a very good way of doing it. Then you also have some cool stuff like Constricting Coils, which is a nice disabling spell for enemies. It's like a hold monster or a hold person. You have Flame Strike if you want some damage as well, fire-based and also divine damage-based. And I guess I can go into more detail on this one because it's kind of a special spell. It will affect everybody in the area. It's not a large area, it's a tiny area. Keep that in mind. It's not like a fireball type of effect, it's a bit shorter. It will deal 1d6 points of damage per caster level to a maximum of 15d6. But the cool part here is half the damage is fire damage, but the other half is divine. And a lot of enemies can resist fire damage or just straight up be immune to it, but nobody is immune or resistant to divine. So if you want guaranteed damage, Flame Strike can help you out with that. You have Raise Dead. Obviously, if somebody dies, it's one of your go-to spells. Righteous Magic, if your cleric is melee, it will buff your strength, give you some combat bonuses. Slay Leaving, also a very powerful spell, but it's only for melee because you have to succeed on a melee touch attack. And I don't want this character that's kind of like an archer with low defenses to get into melee. Spell Resistance if you want to give this to your characters. I typically don't like having spell resistance on my characters because this will also negate beneficial effects, which is very annoying. And yeah, those are the main spells that I've considered for level 5. On level 6, we get access to some very cool stuff. The main things are going to be buff spells, mass version, so you can apply Bull Strength or Bear's Endurance or Owl's Wisdom or Eagle Splendor to everybody in the party with a single cast. Very, very cool. You have Dispel Magic Greater, which can also help out in certain fights. You gain access to Blessing of Luck and Resolve, which gives you bonuses to saving throws against fear, and even if you fail a saving throw against fear, you can re-roll with an added bonus, so very good. Chains of Light is a disabling single target effect, also quite cool. And then, other than that, you have Inspiring Recovery, which is kind of the same thing as Breath of Life. You get Hellfire Ray if you want to toss out rays. In my case with her, it wouldn't do much, so I never end up using it. Heal is very, very important. It will heal up to a maximum of 150 hit points to a single friend. It will also heal ability damage, blind, confusion, dazed, dazzled, diseased, exhausted, fatigued, nauseated, poisoned, sickened, and also stunned. So heal spells are very, very good. Give me a second. Okay, give me a second. And I'm back. So, to summarize on level 6, I would say the more important ones would be Stoneskin Communal, which can also negate a lot of damage to your entire party. I don't have it here because Jubilost can grant this to our party. And yeah, the important ones are Heal, obviously, very, very handy. Buff spells, mass version, also very cool. I like always having at least one Blessing of Luck and Resolve, also very handy. And I take the Spell Magic Greater in case I need it, although I very rarely use it. For level 7, I believe that from level 7 you start getting a lot of spells that you don't really use all that much. So I don't even use anything from my domains, although I could have Restoration Greater equipped, sure. Although I have a lot of scrolls for this purpose, so I don't memorize it. I even just have Summon Ally, which I used like once, I think. I have my Archon's Aura heightened at this level. And then I have Waves of Ecstasy, which basically means that affected creatures are stunned for 1 round and staggered for the remainder of the spell. And even if they make the will save, they are still staggered for the first round. So stunning an enemy is very powerful, obviously, and staggering is also very powerful. So something that even if they succeed on the save, they get staggered for 1 round is going to be something that I consider to be powerful. It is not party friendly though, so keep that in mind. But the more important one out of these all is going to be Bestow Grace of the Champion. And this spell is something that I would always have one with me, depending on the party, of course. Because what this does is, the target gains immunity to diseases, immunity to fear. It adds its charisma bonus to all its saving throws. This spell has no effective cast on a paladin. Target has to be lawful good. So, in my case, I have a sorcerer that is lawful good. The main casting stat of my sorcerer is charisma. So, just by having this on, I think I have it actually, I do. So just by having this buff, we can see here we're getting a plus 13 to all of our saving throws, just from that one spell. Of course, if you don't have somebody that's lawful good, or if he doesn't have a lot of charisma, then it's not nearly as good of a spell. But if you do have it, I think it's a pretty much mandatory spell to have. Other than that, I don't really find any other spells here to be that particularly interesting, with the exception maybe of Destruction. Destruction can deal a lot of damage. It deals 10 points of damage per caster level, so at this point I would be dealing 200 damage with this. But it's Necromancy, I'm not spec'd for it. If they save, they will only take 10d6. It's single target. I don't really need it. Like I said, she's mostly here for buffing purposes, not for single target damage spells. Although, it is, again, like I said, a powerful spell. I'm focusing here on Waves of Ecstasy because I ended up going for Spell Focus and Enchantment as well. On level 8 you have a lot of good stuff. You have Shield of Law. I actually thought this came from the community domain, but I think it comes just from the regular bonuses here? Maybe? Yeah. Shield of Law is your most important spell at level 8. It will give you a bunch of bonuses. I won't go through all of them right now. The important thing here is this abjuration protects from all mind-affecting spells and effects. This is crucial. There are certain fights where enemies will toss some spells at you, like for example, Overwhelming Presence, that if you fail the save, you are dead. Well, you are essentially dead. It's very, very bad to get hit by that. So, having something that makes you immune to that, so immune to Overwhelming Presence, to confusion effects, anything that takes out the control of your character, this will make you immune to that. That is mandatory, in my opinion. I would always have at least one of these memorized. Always. Other than that, we have Frightful Aspect. Very important. So I mentioned on Valerie that I take 8 levels in Bard as quickly as possible to get access to Dirge of Doom, because Dirge of Doom creates an aura that will shake all of the opponents with no save allowed, and Frightful Aspect does the same thing passively. So you buff yourself with this, you don't need to turn on any song, and you will get a bunch of bonuses, and you will also emit that aura of fear. So they will all get shaken. No save allowed unless they are immune to it. So by doing this, you constantly have this on, and you can use your bard to sing other songs, like buffing your party. So I would always have one of these memorized. Angelic Aspect Greater. I've mentioned this on my main character. It makes you immune to acid and cold, gives you resistance to other elements like electricity and fire. It will give you damage reduction. It will give you more saves against other types of effects. And it also provides an aura that also gives benefits to all of your party members. So it's a very good spell. It's one that I would always have one memorized. Just one, because typically it's 1 minute per level. It's more than enough to do whatever I want. And if I want it again, I can use Bond and Holy Symbol, or I can just rest. Then we also have access to, for example, Firestorm, which is very cool. Does a lot of fire damage. It's party friendly on a very large area. So a very cool fire-based spell. We get Storm Bolts. Again, party friendly, one of my favorite spells for my sorcerer. Deals a lot of lightning damage. It can stun enemies. And again, these two are also Evocation spell. And we do have the spell focus for it. And then I also take Secrets of the Suramgamin. You only get this if you succeed on a quest. But it is quite cool. I use it on very specific fights, but I like having it. Other than that, there isn't anything here that I can say that I really like. Rift of Ruin is incredibly powerful, but it suffers from the same type. It suffers from the same problem as any other AoE non-party friendly spell in Kingmaker. You cast this, your friends might also fall into it, and then you have to wait for the effect to end before you can pass through that area. For that reason alone, I don't use it. If I had selective meta magic, I would definitely use it. And finally, on level 9, you don't have a lot to choose from here, but you do get Mind Blank Communal, which in my opinion is mandatory. It lasts for 4 hours. It will apply a +8 resistance bonus on saving throws against all mind-affecting spells and effects to the entire party. Very awesome. Would always slot just one, because 4 hours is more than enough. You get Heal Mass, so the same thing that Heal does, except this one can heal for more than 150. It goes up to 250, and it does the same thing as Heal. It will heal for a lot, and it will also remove a lot of negative effects. Not only that, if you are fighting a bunch of undead enemies, not only are you healing your party, you are also hitting the enemies for a tremendous amount of damage. So, very good. I slot as much as I can of this spell. And finally, we have Overwhelming Presence. I think this is probably one of the most powerful spells in the game. it's enchantment. It's also one of the reasons why I did focus on enchantment. So, party friendly. Anybody that does not save against this will fall to the ground and prostrate itself before you, believing it bows before the divine presence. These creatures are cowering for the duration of the spell. They can't do anything. They will just lie there and die. Each round after that, they may attempt to save. And the creature that saves will take wisdom, drain, and also become staggered for a certain amount of rounds. It is very powerful. And even if they save, they are still staggered for the first round. So I like to have at least one of these, possibly two of these, depending on how much you want from heal mass. And since you can also get a lot of heal mass scrolls, you could just have a lot more overwhelming presences over here. Other than these three spells, I don't use anything else. If you want summons, sure, you have them. Dominate is a single target. I don't think it's gonna do much for me. Polar Midnight doesn't do much. It's not party friendly. You don't have selected meta magic. And Energy Drain. Draining some levels from an enemy is not gonna do much for you either. So, and the spells I love are the ones I showed, and what I am currently equipping at endgame are the ones you can see on the left side over here. Finally, looking at equipment. There really isn't anything too mandatory for a character such as this one. It's basically give her the best bow you can find. So for the first part, I gave her Devourer of Metal, which you can get in the Troll Keep. I used that bow for the majority of the game. Then I gave her Mirror Bow, because I got this as a masterpiece from an artisan. And finally, I also found the Gamekeeper of the First World, which I think is also quite cool. It will apply a penalty to AC of the enemies to help out my party. So, cool bows, essentially. Other than that, in terms of gear, this shouldn't be here. I would say that the robe I like giving her is... if I can find it. What is it? This one? No. This one. Robe of True Master. It will give me a +5 deflection bonus to AC. It will give me spell resistance, saving throws, and +2 bonus to spell penetration. So all good stuff to use on her. Naturally, you could also give other stuff, like a robe that will give you extra saves, or if you wanted to use lightning spells, you could use Robe of Air, for example. I like giving her Robe of True Master. Sorry, had to make a pause here. Like I was saying, I was talking about the robe. I've mentioned the bows. Just basically use the best ones you can find. And then I don't really have anything here that I consider mandatory. I like using especially the Ring of the Beast King, because it will give an enhancement bonus to strength and dexterity of your pet, and you can get this quite early. Bracers of the Ruby Phoenix Champion, it will just give you bonuses to attack with bows. Both attack rolls and also damage, quite good. And this is basically the improved version of the Archer's Bracers. Let me see if I can find them to show them off. Yeah, Bracers of Archery, which you can also get quite early as well. She has Absolver's Cloak because she is also lawful good, for the same reason as my main character. I gave her Maya's Charm. Makes enchantment and illusion school spells have their DCs increased by 2. So basically you are making those spells, in our case enchantment spells, more difficult to resist. Belt of Physical Perfection, just for more stats. Cheat Sheet Gloves, I like them because they give us a +5 luck bonus on Lore Nature, which is something that only Cordampina is using in my current party. And finally, I also have her with Easy Stride. Gives her some bonus to stealth, doesn't matter too much, but also grants her the ability to cast Dimension Door as a 7th level wizard. So I've mentioned the benefits of Dimension Door on other characters. Her having access to it is just an improvement as well. Other than that, rods. Just give her rods. Greater Reach is awesome. Quicken is awesome. Lesser Quicken is awesome. Extend is awesome. Basically any kind of rod is going to be good, and if you also want to do something more with your bows and arrows, quivers will also be useful. Any kind of quiver you can find. Other than that, no real mandatory item. I guess the only one I find to be quite useful is the Ring of the Beast King, and also unique to her, or for example Ekundayo. So, Ecclesiarch, my cleric support has been handled. Took more time than I expected. So let's finish this up and talk about Jubi, which should be simpler. So Jubilost, in terms of level ups, is also quite simple. He is a pure alchemist. I never multi-class this guy. And the role of Jubilost is primarily as a very, very good buffer for the entire party, and brings a lot of utility and damage in the form of bombs. So he has specific bombs that do various things, like you can dispel people with his bombs, you can stagger and deal divine damage, or you can curse them or deal fire damage or acid damage or prone them with force bombs. There's a lot you can do with the bombs of the Alchemist class, which is very, very powerful. It gives you a lot of versatility and a lot of very powerful effects. And his role, like I was saying, is buffing and also using his bombs. For the most part, he doesn't even shoot the crossbow except very early on in the game. He just tosses bombs and casts spells. I was gonna say something else about him. I'm forgetting. Oh, so basically he is on the back line. He's never in melee. You don't want him in melee. You want him casting spells and throwing bombs. Early on in the game, when you don't have a lot of bombs yet, just give him the best crossbow you can find and shoot with him. That's fine. Once you start getting some more bombs, just switch to just using bombs non-stop. Let's look at the level ups here. Like I said, very simple. It's straight up level 20 in Alchemist. He comes to us, I don't know at what level. I think he's at like, what, level 4 or something like that. Because I know he comes with acid bombs already. But I'm not sure if he has ability focus bombs yet. In any case, he either comes to the party at level 4 or level 5 when you pick him up. So, he is an Alchemist, which is the pure base class Alchemist. He would have been better as a Grenadier, in my opinion, but for the most part, it's fine. He has his proficiencies. He has throw anything to throw his bombs and also give a bonus to that. He comes with point blank shot, which then he also leveled up to precise shot. You always want these two feats on anybody shooting into melee, very important. He has his mutagen, which will buff the stats that you want. At the start of the game, I would always buff dexterity, and once I get cognitogen, I start buffing intelligence, which is his main stat. He already comes in with fire bombs and acid bombs, which are going to be very important for the stage in the game where you pick him up, where you are dealing with trolls, because acid will remove regeneration of trolls and enable you to kill them, and the same thing goes for fire, except some of them are actually immune to fire, so you want to use acid, and he can help you out a lot with that. Ability focus on bombs just adds to the difficulty class of saving throws against his bombs, because some bombs will have difficulty class associated. And then, at level 6, I give him what I consider to be the most iconic and most useful feat that you can give this guy. Well, not feat, what do they call this? Goddamn, what's the name? Medical discovery. The best discovery you can give an alchemist is infusion. What this does is, it allows the alchemist to use his extracts not only on himself, but on other people as well. With this discovery, all alchemist extracts will behave exactly like spells of the same names when considering targets and range. So, let me rephrase this into something a little bit easier to understand. All personal spells can be applied to your allies also. And there's a lot of spells which are very, very good, but are only personal. And by having an alchemist with infusion, you can spread that around on other people as well. Once we look at the spellbook, you will understand why I think this is so important. A lot of my feats actually go into extra bombs, just so that I can throw more bombs as we go forward. Especially once you unlock fast bombs, where you start tossing like 4 bombs or 3 bombs or something per turn, they will get spent quite easily or quite quickly, so having more bombs just gives you more staying power. I also give him improved critical with the bomb, making him crit also on a 19. I give him weapon focus bomb to get an additional attack bonus with bombs. I give him critical focus, which gives him a +4 bonus to confirm critical hits with the bombs. Extra bombs and extra bombs. So feat-wise, it's very simple to understand what I'm doing here, and you just have a lot of bombs to use. In terms of medical discoveries, he already comes with Precise Bomb, which I would also consider to be a crucial discovery to have. When the Alchemist throws a bomb, it does not affect allies, because by default, the bombs will splash damage and will hit your allies as well. He also has the Acid Bomb, like I said, for acid damage. I give him Infusion on level 6 here. I give him on level 8 Force Bombs, which I think is going to be the best type of bomb you can use for the entire game. And what these do is they will deal slightly less damage than regular bombs, but creatures that take a direct hit from the Force Bomb will get knocked prone unless they succeed at a reflex save. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot of enemies in this game where you can exploit their reflex saves. I have dropped a bunch of enemies. You can prone trolls very easily. You can prone golems easily. Basically any kind of large enemy you have a very good chance of proning. And also humans and humanoid creatures. There's just so much you can do with force bombs that's insane. And prone, I've mentioned this before, is amazing because if the enemy is prone, it cannot fight back, it gets a penalty to his AC, and when it tries to get up, he triggers attacks of opportunity from anybody in the area. So in my case, anybody that gets prone by a force bomb, when getting up, is going to get a free attack from Valerie, Rigongar, Knock Knock, and my Leopard as well. So proning enemies is incredibly powerful, and force bombs will allow you to do that. Then I also take fast bombs, because if you don't take this, you can only shoot a single bomb per round. So fast bombs means you throw more bombs per round, desirable. I like taking Cursed Bomb as well. Here you can take a multitude of bombs also, or even here, you could also go for Choking Bombs if you don't have anybody with Stinking Cloud. It's also very powerful. I like Cursed Bomb because you can do a lot of different things, right? You can use one of these 4 curses, so you can apply a penalty to Constitution, or to Strength and Dexterity, or to Intelligence, Wisdom and Charisma, so basically lowering their saving throws and their combat capabilities. Or my favorite one, the subject suffers a -4 penalty on attack rolls, saves, ability checks, and skill checks. The most important part here is saves. So if you curse somebody with this, this means that every other effect you apply on them, they will have a harder time saving against. And obviously, by giving them a 4 penalty on attack rolls, you are essentially giving 4 extra AC to everybody in the area, which is very, very nice. I also take Cognitigen, because I use Mutagen up to this point by buffing my Dexterity, and then with Cognitigen, I can start buffing my Intelligence, which is my main stat. I also like taking Holy Bombs, because these bombs deal divine damage, meaning they cannot resist this type of damage, and if you also hit an evil enemy and they don't save against it, they will become staggered, which is a very powerful debuff. After that, I go for Greater Cognitigen, just increasing the power of my Cognitigen, and on level 20 I take Grand Cognitigen, which improves it even further. Not only that, I also pick Awakened Intellect, just buffing our intelligence score permanently by 2 points, and I also took Dispelling Bombs here, even though I didn't actually end up using them. So that's the level up of Juby. I think it's quite simple in terms of feats to understand, and in terms of medical discoveries, I think it's also kind of, you know, at least not too difficult to understand why this is being picked and how effective they are. But for the most part, this really is the main one here. Force bombs are the best ones you can get, in my opinion. As for the spellbook, and this is where the infusion feat or discovery becomes very important. Shield is an amazing spell. This spell will give you a +4 shield bonus to AC. So it's essentially as if you were using a shield if you aren't using a shield. It lasts for 1 minute per level, so it can last a very long amount of time, but it's personal. So let's say, for example, your leopard. Your leopard cannot use a shield. I wish he could, he would get more AC. Knock Knock, he can use a shield, but that's not really what he's built for, right? And even Rigongar doesn't use a shield. Or my Cleric, or my Sorcerer, or even Jubilost. So, by having shields be personal, you could only apply it to himself, but with infusion, you can give shield to your Leopard. So your Leopard is gonna get 4 shield bonus to AC, just making him even tankier. The same thing on Knock Knock. You're making him a whole lot tankier, just +4 AC quite easily from a level 1 spell. Stuff like Expeditious Retreat. If you aren't using haste, this is just a movement buff for anybody that wants to move quicker, right? It's also personal, you can apply to everybody else. Shield really is the main one and one of the most important spells you can get on an Alchemist with infusion. It is useful throughout the entire course of the game. On level 2, it's not personal, but Jubilost does get access to Barkskin, which I use a lot. It scales as you level up, and it goes up to a +5 bonus to AC in terms of natural armor, which is awesome. And you also get access to False Life. Again, it's one of those personal types of spells that will just give you temporary hit points, quite a bit actually, and being able to give these extra hit points to your front line or to your main character to make sure he doesn't die on Last Aslanti is going to be very, very handy. On level 3, depending on what you take, Storm Body is also a cool spell, although this is something I would only really use on lower difficulties because for this to work, you need to get hit. So if you apply Torn Body, for example, on your Leopard, and you send him in, every time an enemy hits him, it's gonna take like Thorns damage back. So another example of a cool personal spell that you can also apply to someone else. But other than that, I just go for defensive stuff and useful stuff. Resist energy, protection from arrows communal, displacement and haste. And by the way, Jubilost is also a character where you don't really have to worry too much or, about which spells you pick when you level up, because you can also learn them from scrolls, which makes it much more flexible. On level 4 becomes another one of those points where infusion takes a big importance here. So all these things are useful, like freedom of movement, I've talked about it, death ward, great invisibility, stone skin, restoration, all this is good. But more importantly than that, we have false life greater, which again gives you just a lot of temporary hit points. You can put it on everybody else and also on the leopard, just making them tankier and safer. And also very importantly, echolocation. So blind fight, we have discussed this feat already. It's very important against a lot of enemies in this game. If you go up against Medusas, if you don't have some kind of immunity to gaze attacks, you get petrified, and that means death for that character, and it might not be trivial to get that character back. You need to have a scroll of Stone to Flesh, and God forbid, if a Medusa targets your main character and he gets petrified, it's game over. And on Last Aslanti, that's even worse. So echolocation is very useful for that, and for especially wild hunt enemies. They will also have a bunch of gaze attacks, constantly trying to paralyze your party, and echolocation is a personal spell that makes you immune to all of that, and with infusion you can spread for everybody in your party. So two great examples of why infusion is so good. Moving on to level 5, nothing very important here. I take spell resistance and stone skin communal. And on level 6, another great example of infusion being awesome. you have Transformation, the very, very powerful spell that can become, that can make a character not very proficient in melee combat or in combat in general become a real fighting machine. You can make somebody that has like 10 attack bonus suddenly have 20 attack bonus just by casting Transformation. However, again, it's a personal spell. So this means I can give Transformation to Knock Knock, for instance, making him even that much better in melee. I think I could likely also give it to my Leopard, even though I've never really thought about it until now. But yeah, Transformation is very good. Personal infusion will allow you to do that. Beast Shape 4. You can transform somebody into a large Smilodon, Shambling Mound, or large Wyvern. Smilodon is a very powerful type of animal. One thing I like to do is I like to transform my Leopard into a Smilodon because it will give him a boost to his stats, it will give him Pounce, it will give him a lot more attacks per round. But again, it's a personal spell. Infusion allows me to put this on my pet. Even Dragonkind. Transform yourself into a dragon. I can transform my Leopard into a dragon. So another great example of why Infusion is so good. Not only that as well, he also has obviously some utility spells and support spells like Heal, Legendary Proportions, True Seeing, whatever you may need, Jubilost will help out. So for the most part, like I said, his main duty is buffing the party and tossing powerful effect bombs on the enemies. In terms of itemization, I would say that the only important or crucial stuff for him are going to be the acerbic rings. These will cause your bombs to deal more damage and they stack with each other. I also like the Gears rule, which you get from Octavia and Rigogar's quest. I think these are a great couple of bracers. The Bombardier's Vest is a cool armor piece for him. It means you have a +2 bonus on attack rolls with bombs and similar weapons. So also a very cool item to have. And other than that, oh yeah, Bomb Thrower's Gloves as well. I think these, I guess you also pick them up, will give you a +2 equipment bonus to attack rolls made with bombs and their DC. So the rings, the bracers, the armor and the gloves are the important ones. Other than that, Saving Throws Cloak, Stat Stick Helmet. In this case I gave him Gyronos Amulet just so he can have some more AC and especially mirror images, because sometimes he does get focused and mirror images will allow him to live for that much longer. A Stat Belt and natural armor and movement boots also. And finally, I guess we could also consider rods, right? So a Quicken Meta Magic Rod will never be wasted on anybody capable of casting spells. And I thoroughly use an Extend Meta Magic Rod just so I can extend haste to make haste last, you know, for that much longer anytime we go out adventuring. For a weapon, I gave him the Mythslayer. You get this from, I think, the Magical Prison quest, which is kind of late. But I would just say give him the best crossbow you can find. It doesn't matter too much, because when you really want Juby to do something, you're either casting spells or throwing bombs. The crossbow is just filler if you are fighting trash enemies and you don't want to waste bombs or spells. So yeah, basically this is the itemization I give for Mr. Jubilost here. And I think that covers everything he's able to do. Okay, so with this, my friends, we have finished in a lot longer time than I thought this would take, covering the party composition, the party roles, the build and itemization and spell selection for each of my characters for this specific playthrough. So, keep in mind, don't copy, because I know a lot of people look at builds and try to copy them. Don't blindly copy any kind of build that you see, be it mine or on any kind of website, because some things might only make sense or might only be useful in certain situations, okay? So let's say, for example, I'll make this quick because I have to finish up. let's say, for example, you're following the build guide for Knock Knock. For the most part, you can actually follow this and you'll be fine. But then, you come, for example, to Seize the Moment. And Seize the Moment only makes sense, in the same way as Outflank, these teamwork feats only make sense if your companions also have them. So, don't copy a guide and pick Seize the Moment on a character and then not have anybody else also it Seize the Moment. It wouldn't work. On that same note, I'm going to reiterate one that I mention a lot, because it comes up a lot. Dazzling Display and Shattered Defenses, do not blindly pick this. Okay? I would not take Dazzling Display or Shattered Defenses if I didn't have a way to easily and in a guaranteed fashion apply Shaken to my enemies, such as Dirge of Doom or Frightful Aspect from my Cleric. Okay? So, do keep that in mind. This one here. In any case, I hope this was useful, this series of 3 videos. I hope it was useful. As always, I want to thank everybody for being here in the channel with me, watching this video. I do hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, suggestions, if you want to discuss any kind of build that I have here, or want to question some decision that I made throughout the course of the playthrough or in the level ups or anything like that, leave a comment below. I will try to answer it to the best of my ability. If you enjoyed the content, consider subscribing for more. Many more videos coming out soon, and I hope to see you all in another video. Until then, stay safe, everyone.